If you lived in the days of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, tell me, how would you preserve your stories? You don't have a Bible. You don't even have an alphabet to write a Bible with. How would you make sure your culture and your stories are preserved and passed down to your children and their children? I suppose you could have your wife sew pictures onto a blanket that tell the story, but blankets can be sold and traded when you're on hard times, or moth and rust can eat them. If you're really clever, something you might consider doing is transcribing your story onto the stars. They can't be traded away. Moth and rust can never eat them. And you know your children are always going to be looking up at them, especially around the campfire when they're ready to hear some stories. I think Jacob did that with his 12 sons when he blessed them in his 12 blessings. I think he attached their stories to the Zodiac. This is Jacob's Zodiac Theory, Part 1. We're going to talk about the obvious ones in this video. For starters, Judah. When you look at Judah's blessing, he's compared to a lion, right? Judah is like a young lion, my son. You return from the kill. He crouches. He lies down like a lion. Does that sound like Leo, the constellation Leo? That's a lion. When you see Leo, I want you to remember my son Judah. Or here's another one that hits 2 constellations and 1 pair of suns. Simon and Levi. Vicious are they. May I never enter their council. For in their anger they hamstrung oxen. Why are Simon and Levi being linked together in a blessing? Their tribes have totally different destinies. One of them becomes the priest and one of them gets a regular tribe. Could it be because Jacob is trying to link their story to a pair of brothers as a constellation, Gemini? And what's more, because they're 2 sons, they get 2 constellations, and the constellation that's right next to Gemini, Tauros, is also kind of mentioned in this blessing. They hamstrung oxen. When you look at the 2 brothers next to the ox, I want you to think of my 2 sons who hamstrung oxen. And then we have Ruben, compared to water. Many pastors will try to make a sermon out of this, thinking about the physics of water taking the shape of its container when they talk about Reuben's life. But I think that Jacob, water was a symbol of destruction, floods. It was a symbol of Aquarius, the water bearer, the constellation you see when it's flood season. So he compared Ruben to Aquarius because sleeping with his wife brought destruction to their family. These are just the obvious ones. We'll cover some of the less obvious ones in part 2 and 3.